I rented a firewood log processor that costs in excess of $200,000 if you would buy it brand new. We ran it for one day for 8 hours, and I just wanted to put this video together explaining how it all went. Let's get into it.
Obviously, renting a firewood processor of this magnitude, you're going to need quite a bit of wood to keep it all busy. And a bunch of trees we were pushing over a bunch of these trees in this pasture area in order to make more grazing area for some cattle. Every time we have an operation like this, me and my brother always do it the exact same way. I'm the cut man, and he drives around on the skid steer lifting them up, making them easier for me to cut. And this particular situation was no different. He did the driving, and I did the cutting. Lots and lots of cutting. After 2 or 3 solid evenings of work, me and my brother got this area looking a whole lot better. We eventually got all the logs cut and moved up into a pile. As you can see, the cows were starting to check out the new area, and they couldn't wait to start feasting where all this new grass was going to start growing. The last step was just taking all these logs and getting them moved south, and that's where we were going to put them into a big pile and do all of the processing.
So after getting a log count on log pile number 1, I ended up having 66 that were good enough to be running through the processor, 8 that were too big and weren't going to go through the processor, and 1 that was all jack-legged and really wavy and it wasn't going to go through the processor at all. I'm going to go over to log pile number 2 now, see how many we got over there. We'll get a grand total.
All these logs came from some blowdowns, which had been sitting there for 2 or 3 years. And they were definitely ready to be cut up, and since the processor was coming, we decided to throw it in with this pile. And at the end of it all, we had 100 logs that were ready to be split into some firewood. When the day of the rental finally arrived, we had a humongous pile of logs, we had the log processor, and we were ready to get some firewood made up as quickly as humanly possible. And I say let's get it done as quick as humanly possible. And that's obviously why I rented this. Normally, all these logs would be thrown into a large pile like you see here, and I would go around cutting it, and I would grab the rounds once they've been cut and throw them into a different area in order to be split. And sometimes I'd be in an area where I didn't have a splitter, so I had to move to a location where I could get the wood split. And that means I'd have to touch the wood again and get it loaded into a trailer. And if you just so happen to have a bunch of really dense heavy hardwoods and you're trying to reload it and touch it again, it just creates a very cumbersome task. And then once you finally get all the wood loaded up, the next step is pretty obvious. You gotta get the wood split. I personally really love splitting wood, but it does take a lot of time. And whether you want to go through and cut it all manually, just like this big old piece of mulberry here, or if you cut it with a machine such as my 22-ton kinetic log splitter, either way, you have to dedicate a lot of time to it, and then you also have to load the firewood and get it to the area where you need to burn it. So enter the firewood processor. Using it, I don't have to run my chainsaw or do any moving or splitting of rounds. All I have to do is load the logs up onto the conveyor, the machine does all the work, and then we have some split wood ready to deliver. So let's do the breakdown on how this firewood processor rental went, starting with the equipment we used. We used this old Volvo triaxle dump truck, the Kubota skid steer, and also the 6.7 F350, as well as the dump trailer in order to move all the wood and deliver it. It really helped that we had all of this wood laying the same direction, so the skid steer was able to come in the same way every time and get it picked. If we would have laid it together and not laid everything the same way, the skid steer would have been less efficient trying to pick up the logs and get to the machine. And speaking of efficiency, it would have been a little better if we would have taken the processor and put it a little bit closer to the wood pile, just so the skid steer wouldn't have to drive quite as far and we'd have got it done a little quicker. But as you can see, I did have to get in there and make a couple cuts with my chainsaw in order to make the logs a little bit better to put onto the conveyor, so we did need a little bit of space in between in order for me to comfortably and safely work. And once we had a log suitable for the processor, my brother loaded it up with the skid steer, and it was all the MULTITEK from there. This particular model is the 2040 XP2. It has a 125 horsepower John Deere diesel engine, and it can take a log that's 40 feet long and up to 23 inches in diameter. And once you get the log loaded up onto the conveyor, it's a pretty simple system. The operator controls the chains on the conveyor that feed the log towards the overhead shuttle grapple. Then, using the unit's laser measurement system, the appropriate length of log is pulled underneath the 60-inch circular saw. The log is cut to the desired length, which I had set at 18 inches. And that firewood round is dropped into the splitting cavity where the operator splits it. It falls into the conveyor and it goes up into the trailer. And like I said, we use 2 different vehicles to load the wood into. I sell firewood every year, and 75% of the wood we cut with this MULTITEK machine, I sold the very same day. But if I didn't have anyone to sell to, we could have very easily just dropped the wood into big piles and continually scooted the machine back or move the conveyor from side to side. However, I would suggest our method of using 2 different loading vehicles. The only thing you have to do is load up a certain area of the trailer and then creep the trailer forward 1 or 2 times in order to get the most wood per load. I also got in the back a time or 2 throughout the day and hand spread the wood out, only because I was going to be driving down the road and didn't want any pieces falling out. Once the dump trailer was full, I would make the 3-mile drive to the person I was delivering to, and the Volvo would pull underneath the firewood conveyor. We flip-flopped between dump trailer and dump truck all day, and we never had to pick up any wood on the ground. So was renting this Multitek worth it? The answer to that was absolutely. I never had to cut, split, or hand load any of this wood, and I was able to deliver more loads of wood to more people in record-setting pace. In the 8-hour day, we ended up producing 60 rick of wood, which is 20 cords. But if you are experienced on loading the processor with logs and have a bunch of straight wood, this machine can do anywhere from 36 to 56 cords in 8 hours. So the cost of this rental ended up being $960, and I will definitely be renting out this machine in the future. The owner of the Multitek delivered and operated the machine for us, and it was a very positive firewood experience. I encourage everyone to try renting a machine of this magnitude if you have the means. Well guys, that's my experience renting this Multitek log processor. If anyone has any additional questions about my experience renting the processor, please let me know in the comments section. If you guys enjoyed the video, give it a like and subscribe to the channel. God bless, and as always, have a good one.